Justin Trudeau, I'll fact-bomb you under control. Video analysis. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Justin Pierre James Trudeau is the leader of the Liberal Party, and he's held that position since 2013. Of greater consequence and note, he's been serving as the 23rd Prime Minister of Canada since 2015. He was born in Ottawa, and he graduated from McGill University in 1994 with a Bachelor of Arts degree in Literature, and then in 1998 acquired a Bachelor of Education degree from the University of British Columbia. After graduating, he taught at a secondary school level in Vancouver before relocating back to Montreal in 2002 to further his studies. He was chair for the youth charity Katamavik and director of the not-for-profit Canadian Avalanche Association. In 2006, he was appointed as chair of the Liberal Party's Task Force on Youth Renewal. In the 2008 federal election, he was elected to represent the riding of Papineau in the House of Commons. He was the Liberal Party's official opposition critic for youth and multiculturalism in 2009, and the following year became critic for citizenship and immigration. In 2011, he was appointed as a critic for secondary education and sport. He prevailed in the leadership of the Liberal Party in April 2013 and led his party to a majority victory in the 2015 federal election. He was the second youngest Prime Minister in Canadian history when he took office, and the first to be a child of a previous holder of the post, as the eldest son of Pierre Trudeau. Major government initiatives followed, and he then guided the Liberals to a minority government victory in the 2019 federal election. In 2020, his government responded to the COVID-19 pandemic, announced an assault-style weapons ban in response to the 2020 Nova Scotia attacks, and launched a national $10 a day childcare programme. He was investigated for a third time by the Ethics Commissioner for his part in the WE charity scandal, but was cleared of wrongdoing. In the 2021 federal election, he led the Liberals to another minority government. In 2022, following his third election, Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act in response to the Freedom Convoy protests, the first time the act was brought into force since it was enacted in 1988. Trudeau launched a national school food programme and entered into a confidence and supply agreement with the New Democratic Party, which resulted in the Canadian Dental Care Plan for residents that meet a certain income threshold. However, after 2.5 years, the NDP opted to terminate the agreement. He's not the most popular individual, and whilst originally he was seen as this rather good-looking and young and dashing individual, his tenure in government has certainly caused his popularity to tank and his reputation to sour. Hitherto, I've analysed Justin Trudeau. I've distilled evidence to make a determination as to what he is. For some time, I know that many people have wanted him put under the Tudor scope, and as a consequence of time pressure, I've never had the opportunity to distill the information that I obtained and the evidence that I perused into a detailed series about him. And therefore I've decided that since it's unlikely that I'll ever have the opportunity to go through that in detail, I'm just going to utilise examples of his behaviour to reinforce what he is, to help people understand about what he is and to see him in action. Accordingly, it is the case that Justin Trudeau is a narcissist. There's plenty of evidence that supports that, but now isn't the opportunity for me to go through that in detail. What is his classification? Well, I've determined, based on the evidence that is exhibited, and there's plenty of it, that he is an upper mid-range elite. This means that in terms of cadre, he has both somatic traits and cerebral traits. He is an amalgam of the two. So he has an interest in his appearance. He is usually well-groomed. He looks after himself. He wears decent clothing. He likes money. He has that due regard for the somatic aspects of appearance and materialism, but alongside that, there are the cerebral traits in respect of the education that he's had, certain interests that he have are of a cerebral nature. So whilst he's neither heavily somatic or heavily cerebral, he has aspects of the two. With regard to his position as an upper mid-range narcissist, what this means is he doesn't know what he is, but he has a wide range of manipulative behaviours. He is of intelligence. He does have charisma. There is a haughty arrogance about him whereby, although he wants to be seen as a decent person, he truly regards himself as superior to all of those around him, and at times isn't afraid to let that show, because after all, he's Justin Trudeau and he's the Prime Minister of Canada. He's not as brusque and as bullish as you might find with other individuals who find themselves in government who are the upper lesser type B. He still has a degree of smoothness and polish about him. But there is that prevailing attitude and air of superiority that basically you're the little people and you'll do what you're told. He knows better. He knows you better than you know yourself. And you're going to witness this superiority and arrogance of the upper mid-range narcissist in a clip that I'm going to present to you now. It relates to Trudeau undertaking a visit to some steel workers, and there is a bit of a confrontation with one of them. Here comes the footage.
Hey, I'm fine. Just one
Prime Minister again. Well, we got donuts over here if you want to thank you for your hard work.
I can bring some for my kids here.
Okay. The 25% tariffs we just brought in on Chinese steel is going to help you out.
That's going to keep my job,
yeah.
What about the $400 40% taxes I'm paying? And I don't have a doctor?
The $400 million that we invested to invest in the electric car means you're going to have a job for
I think you're only here for another year. We won't see you around probably another year.
Well, that's what elections are for.
That's right.
And I look forward to everyone exercising the right to vote.
Yep.
Basic choice. We're going to invest in you and your job.
I don't believe you for a second.
Dental care? Do you know anyone who got dental care?
Yeah, I pay for it myself.
Okay.
We're like 3 years behind.
You have a job and coverage?
Yeah,
but we
four
got
people
seniors.
in my family.
We've got
Every time we go for a dental visit, it's costing me about $50 in my pocket per person.
Okay.
Why? I have a good job. You're not really doing anything for us, Justin.
Well, actually, we just invested, so 500,000 people who haven't been to the dentist got to go to the dentist over the past few months.
Probably like my neighbor that doesn't go to work because she's lazy.
Well,
She just doesn't go to work. She lives the same life I do.
Most Canadians try to stick up for each other, and that's what we're going to keep doing.
Yeah.
Good luck and take care of your family, sir.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right.
Have a nice day.
Have a good day, sir. All right. All right, the other guys got the donuts. Excellent.
The first thing that you'll notice in this outdoor meeting is that Trudeau goes towards the gentleman wearing the red sweater or red sweatshirt and seeks to assert control over him by shaking hands with him. The steelworker refuses to do so, and that causes wounding for Trudeau. The man is a non-intimate tertiary source, therefore the potency of his fuel is weak. Nevertheless, because the snub has taken place in person, whilst it isn't massive, it's still of significance. However, as an upper mid-range narcissist, Trudeau has a fairly high threshold on his ignited fury. So it's not the case that he would turn to him and say, "What's your fucking problem, pal?" or punch him in the face. Instead, he simply ignores him. So in that moment, there's a threat to control by virtue of failure to shake his hand, and he then proceeds to move on to the next man. In that instance, he brushes him to one side. He asserts control by essentially staying in a position of withdrawal from the man and shakes the hand of the next individual who responds favourably, providing him with fuel. However, the man in the red sweatshirt isn't letting Trudeau get away. Whilst Trudeau seeks to ignore him, thus nullifying the threat to control posed by whatever it is the man is saying, which, as we'll learn, is clearly critical, Trudeau continues to engage with the two workers who are stood to one side with the blue hard hats on. However, the man in the red sweatshirt is persistent, and he is continuing to talk to Trudeau, providing him with challenge fuel, which ultimately means that Trudeau needs to address this threat to control. It isn't sufficient for him to continue to ignore him. Why? Well, quite simply, as somebody that wields a facade, Trudeau's narcissism recognises it wouldn't be a good look for him to continue to ignore this man, therefore he needs to address him. But how does he do so? How does he do so, rather? Well, it doesn't seem as though he addresses the initial concern because he invites him to eat some donuts instead. That is demonstrative of the high-handed attitude of the upper mid-ranger. I'm not listening to what you're crapping on about. Have a donut instead. Trudeau attempts to be pleasant by saying it's to thank you for all your hard work, but the gentleman in the red sweatshirt isn't buying it. He makes reference to something about, can I bring my kids here, or to provide the donuts to the children. This, again, is another issue of challenge fuel that's been threatening the control of Trudeau. At this juncture, it is interesting to note that he doesn't respond by asking after the children, but instead, he's clearly irritated Trudeau. Now, because of the control he has with the high threshold over his ignited fury, he's not going to turn around and say, just shut your effing mouth, you pleb, who do you think you are? A combination of the necessity of facade management and that high threshold over control means Trudeau just simply isn't going to respond in that way in a public situation. But what he does is interesting. He basically unleashes an arrogant response which isn't so much addressing the concerns of the worker, but simply telling him, know your place, because I'm now going to fact-bomb you. I'm going to talk about my achievements, what my government has done, and you're going to take the medicine. Trudeau makes mention of the tariffs that have been brought in on Chinese steel. This is probably correct what he's saying, but the manner in which he's telling this individual is it's almost like talking to a robot, whereby a button has been pressed and it's, I must now issue propaganda in relation to the steel industry. And of course, the steelworker isn't buying it. The steelworker queries whether it's going to keep his job, and Trudeau continues to throw statistics at him. He then stops when the man starts making mention of the amount of taxes that he's paying. Note, the response isn't from Trudeau of, I understand your concerns about high taxes and I understand that things must be difficult. Instead, it's, I'm going to tell you about my track record and what I've been doing to shut you up. Here comes another fact bomb where I tell you about $400 million worth of investment. And now again, this is probably all correct, but the way that he's basically hammering this individual with information is demonstrative of the complete absence of emotional empathy. The arrogance of Trudeau, which is, I know better than you, I've got the facts, I've got the investment, I know what's been going on, you're just a little pleb who should actually be shaking my hand and eating donuts and not interrupting me in this way. Mr. Red Sweatshirt clearly is unimpressed with Trudeau and basically tells him, we're only going to see you around for another year, I don't think you'll be around. Trudeau deals with that with a relative polish. Rather than biting and lashing out, he agrees that this is what elections are for. He wields his facade by talking about the fact that he welcomes everybody exercising their right to vote. Having dealt with that, Trudeau wants to continue demonstrating the flex with regard to investment and returns the conversation to that. But Mr. Red Sweatshirt isn't having any of it. He simply states outright, I don't believe anything you're telling me. In an entertaining section, Trudeau then slightly changes tack by deciding that he will make mention of dental care. And therefore he says to the worker, have you got dental care? Do you know anybody who's got dental care? And the worker responds by saying, yes, I pay for it myself. The worker complains about the cost that occurs in relation to his family of four going for a dental checkup and what it costs. Here, Trudeau nods as if he understands what the man's perspective is, demonstrating agreeability, and at this juncture, the worker makes his feelings plain. He says, you're not really doing anything for us, Justin. Again, challenge fuel. And of course, in this situation, it's being filmed. Other people are watching. The exchange is being photographed also. Reporters will be writing up about what has occurred. Therefore, it's necessary for Trudeau's facade to ensure that it keeps the fury that will be churning beneath the surface under wraps. This threat to control by basically saying, you're not doing anything for us, is a threat to control, and Trudeau seeks again to fact bomb our worker here into submission by returning to the question of investment. The worker also highlights a neighbour who is lazy and clearly complains about those circumstances. Trudeau again attempts to talk about investment and then clearly recognises, or rather his narcissism recognises, that this individual is not going to give him the control that he seeks directly, that he's going to continue to argue with him. And therefore, he seeks to bring the conversation to a conclusion by essentially wishing him a good day. He again seeks to shake the man's hand and he refuses, which causes wounding of Trudeau. His facade holds intact and the man walks away from him, which similarly wounds. Trudeau then essentially dismisses the individual, doesn't yell after him, "Fuck you, you loser." Naturally, facade management won't let that happen. And he turns, smiles, and then refers to the donuts once again. What you see here is an upper mid-range narcissist who's been repeatedly challenged by a non-intimate tertiary source who keeps giving him fuel because he's interacting with him, he's talking to him, his tone of voice, his body language, his facial expression, the look in his eyes are all giving fuel to Trudeau. So the reasonable amounts of it because of the proximate interaction, but he's repeatedly challenging him, criticising him. And the arrogant and haughty response of Trudeau is to respond not by understanding the man's concerns, but basically bulldozing him into submission by talking about all of his achievements and investments. It demonstrates a high-handed approach of just basically turning up and throwing statistics at him. And it doesn't actually work. In the end, like any narcissist, Trudeau gets control because in his own mind he jettisons the man. But his facade management is suitably strong that he doesn't lose his temper, that he doesn't say anything that's unpleasant towards the individual. But knowing that he's a narcissist, you are able to see his upper mid-range nature coming to the fore because he acts with the degree of polish in the exchange. He keeps his temper, the ignited fury is kept under control by the facade management, but it is the polished arrogance and the haughtiness by which he engages in the fact bombing which demonstrates his upper mid-range status. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for watching.